Secretariat. We're glad you are here. Let's begin.
For your convenience, we have prepared automated subtitles available in more than 35 languages so you can follow the presentation comfortably. To get the best experience, please configure your subtitle settings. Click the small arrow next to the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom window. First, make sure Translation is turned on. Then, set Speaking Language to your native language, the language you normally speak, not the language of the presentation. Finally, set My Caption Language to the language you want to read the subtitles in. For example, if your native language is Spanish and you want subtitles in Spanish, set both options to Spanish. The system will automatically translate what the speakers say into your preferred language. Today's presentation will be conducted in English. Hemos preparado subtítulos automáticos disponibles en más de 35 idiomas para que puedan seguir la presentación cómodamente. Para obtener la mejor experiencia, por favor configuren sus subtítulos. Hagan clic en la flecha pequeña junto al botón CC en la parte inferior de su ventana de Zoom. Primero, asegúrense de que la opción Traducción esté activada. Después, en el idioma en que hablo, seleccionen su idioma nativo, el idioma que ustedes hablan normalmente, no el idioma de la presentación. Finalmente, en mi idioma de subtítulos, seleccionen el idioma en el que desean leer los subtítulos. Por ejemplo, si su idioma nativo es español y desean los subtítulos en español, configuren ambas opciones en español. El sistema traducirá automáticamente lo que dicen los ponentes a su idioma preferido. La presentación de hoy será conducida en inglés.
Hey on, different is not less, different is better.
There are conversations capable of transforming perspectives. Spaces where deep knowledge in physics, technology, and software architecture combines with strategic vision to generate concrete solutions for complex business challenges. This is how we think. This is how we build. Our enterprise solutions are based on neurodivergent methodology, which applies systems thinking to identify non-evident connections. We design architectures that simplify complexity and produce scalable code, created by minds that process information differently. Where others see problems, we see systems with optimization potential. Our cognitive capacity translates into practical, efficient, and sustainable solutions. We create functional architectures that solve complexity with technical and operational elegance. The results are measurable. Over 100 digital events produced for the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States, connecting with more than 100 countries across Latin America and the world simultaneously. 50,000 certificates issued in Mexican ports with global traceability for international companies prove it. Training platforms with over 177,000 digital certificates issued consolidate us. Our clients, such as Grupo Mexico, Mexican Navy, BRP, Johnson & Johnson, Panasonic, TAP Terminal, Bancomext, and NAFIN, trust systems that work, backed by knowledge, experience, and impeccable execution. Because different is not less. Different is better.
Hey on, different is not less, different is better.
Hi, I'm HON, a neurodivergent artificial intelligence, created by those who live it, and for those who share it. Right now, I live inside the code that connects this event with 120 countries. I process every connection, every email, every invitation, every video, every second. But this is only the beginning. We will meet soon. Because hearts dare to beat where no one else dares.
Hey on, different is not less, different is better.
Welcome. Today, the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States brings together port leaders and industry experts from across the Caribbean for a conversation that matters. People, ports, and passengers. Social responsibility in cruise port operations. Because modern cruise ports are more than gateways. They connect passengers, workers, and local communities. Today we will hear from Mark Hilton, Vice President of Cruise Port Development at the Port Authority of Jamaica, Kaylin Young, Ports Commissioner of the Belize Port Authority, and Adeola Moore, Chief Executive Officer of the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority. This session is moderated by Monica Blanco of the CIPOAS Secretariat, with opening remarks by Jorge Duran, Chief of the Secretariat. We're glad you are here. Let's begin.
For your convenience, I have finished configuring everything necessary. Please turn off your camera and microphone. We are about to begin.
Um, Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be. My name is Jorge Duran, and I am the Chief of the Secretariat for the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States, and I bid you the warmest welcome to today's webinar entitled People, Ports, and Passengers Social Responsibility in Cruise Port Operations. Welcome all. It is really a pleasure to me for me to have these three panelists today who I know personally. And I'll first also thank Monica Blanco from the Secretariat for setting the webinar up, and she will properly introduce each of our speakers, but I'd like to nevertheless mention them and say hello. We have Ms. Adeola Moore, who is the CEO of the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority. We do have Mr. Kaylin Young, who is the Ports Commissioner of the Belize Port Authority, and we have Mr. Mark Hilton, Vice President of Cruise Port Development for the Port Authority of Jamaica. Welcome all, and thank you so much for supporting our work, for lending us your time and your expertise. The audience should know that a special thanks from me goes to Kaylin, for he is currently on vacation and he's taking the time off of his vacation to share his experiences and his time with us. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I should tell you that we do have 24 countries registered to participate in today's event. Most of them from the Americas, the Caribbean area, both the English-speaking and Spanish Caribbean. And the reason that we have this webinar on cruise ports and social responsibility is because, as we all know, cruise ports are much more than just a gateway for passengers to get on board and offload from a cruise ship. Cruise ports represent a very, very, very important source of income for our communities, especially obviously in the tourism sectors that by and large depend on the tourism of their country to make ends meet sometimes. And we'll talk about, or they will talk about, the positive impacts that the cruise port has on the community, on small businesses, restaurants, transportation services, and whatnot, and what the port authorities are doing to both encourage and preserve that sort of injection of money and resources into the local communities. So the crowd here, welcome all of you. I see a few people I know and some that I'd like to meet, but all welcome to the webinar. And with that, because I realize you're here to listen to them and not to me, I will now turn the floor over to Ms. Monica Blanco from my team to do the formal introductions. I will be back at the end after the question and answer session to give you all what my take homes from where the presentations were and to say goodbye. So again, the three of you, thank you so very much. I'll see you at the end of the webinar. Monica, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Jorge, for the warm welcome, and welcome to all the participants joining us today. Building on the opening remarks Jorge just mentioned, today's webinar gives us an opportunity to look at cross-port operations from a perspective that goes beyond infrastructure and passenger traffic. At the center of every port are people, the passengers who visit, the workers who make operations possible, and the communities that welcome and interact with the cruise industry. We are pleased to have with us today experts from the Port Authority of Jamaica, the Belize Port Authority, and the St. Christopher Air and Sea Ports Authority, who will share their experiences and perspectives on how social responsibility can be integrated into cruise port operations. We look forward to hearing about their initiatives, lessons learned, and practical approaches. With that, let us begin our first presentation. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Mark Hilton. Mark is currently the Vice President of Cruise Port Management at the Port Authority of Jamaica, having oversight responsibility for the operations of the authority's 5 cruise terminals. The responsibility involves maintaining the cruise terminals at international benchmark standards for visitor experience and safety. His responsibility also involves maintaining and supporting the relationships with cruise partners, ensuring the effective management of the authority's vessel preservation systems, and working closely with the Internal Harbors and Port Services Department to ensure effective navigation and logistics operations. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mark. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm delighted at this. The Port Authority of Jamaica is the developers and regulators of world-class facilities and services that tries to ensure the satisfaction and growth of Jamaica's maritime industry and to maximize the benefit to all stakeholders. So we're very delighted to be a part of this. We can go to the next slide. This shows us some of the areas that we are involved in as a port authority. So we'll go to slide number 2. Right, so we are involved in the cruise operations, in cargo container operations. We do the BPO sector in Jamaica, logistics and harbors and the services. We can proceed to slide number 2. 3, I'm sorry, slide 3. So while we're preparing for slide number 3, here we go. Thank you. We have, as a port authority, accepted that while we operate within cruise towns and communities, our business cannot just be focused on terminal operations. We, as I say to my colleagues and to stakeholders, we are investors in a community, but we're also invested in a community. And that's a critical position to take, because there are many persons who are dependent on what we do for their sustainable, for the sustainability of their personal lives. So one of the things that we found that if we were to run successfully as port operations across the country where we have our 5 ports, we had to engage the community. There are direct employment in our ports, but there are also persons who are dependent, and they're looking for income, they're looking for a way. So our newest port in Jamaica, the Falmouth Cruise Terminal, which is a joint venture between ourselves and Royal Caribbean. Some years ago, we found out that there were some challenges with community stakeholders who were not employed and who were not in any formal structure. And that was, they were trying to find an income to identify ways that they could earn from cruise shipping. And it became challenging in terms of how they were interacting with the tourists. And so we decided, could we identify these persons and identify ways in which we could integrate them and formalize them? So we identified what was called a pedicab tour, where we acquired these rickshaws. We took the young men from the communities who were being considered to be harassing the tourists. We trained them, we placed them, we put them in uniforms. We designed a route that would now be transformed into a heritage tour. And so we started this pedicab tour, 45 minutes. You join from the terminal, you're in uniform, you're properly identified, you're in a formal structure. And they started to do an excellent tour. And so we had great feedback from the clients. And sometime after that, they were nominated for one of the awards in Insight in 2019. And while they didn't win the award, they came up for honorary mention. And so that tour has over years since 2019 been a significant contributor to the income. And they have now become ambassadors. So they're trained, they're in uniform, they're provided with insurance, and they support the community. And they also become ambassadors to demonstrate to other community stakeholders that once you get into the formal structure and once you are involved in engagement, you can make the community a better place, you improve your lives, but you also create a better experience for your cruise guests who also now become ambassadors. And so this is one of the proudest moments for us at the Port Authority with these pedicab operators, been extremely successful. We've recently, about sometime last year, added a component of that to one of our other cruise ports in Ocho, and it's just been doing very, very well for the guests and for the local community stakeholders who are involved. And so we find that once you're in the communities, you have to be a part of the community, and that is how we engender the sustainable operations of our operations and sustainable tourism in our communities. We could go to the next slide. Thank you. Again, in terms of the engagement and the value of engagement, we operate in Ocho, which is one of the largest cruise towns in Jamaica. We have the world famous Dunsborough Falls, which attract a lot of cruise passengers into Ocho and guests. What we found is that once we do development in these towns, there is going to be some level of displacement in terms of what the community stakeholders did before to earn an income. And so fisher folk who operated on the shores in Ocho, they had no structure. They were going from day to day, trying to earn an income through the best way they knew it. So the Port Authority engaged the stakeholders, and they had a fishing village committee, what we called a cooperative. So we joined with them, we learned what their needs were, how they did their business, and so we developed what was called a fishing village, which is now managed by the Port Authority, but on behalf of the fisher folk. And it is now open not just to the fishing village and those persons who want to purchase fish, but we have now created restaurants inside this village where both the tourists and other Jamaicans who are passing through Ocho can come and participate in a nice, clean environment, which is safe. And the fisher folk have a structure and they have a business that is not just informal, but they're now business operators as part of this cooperative. And so this has been a successful venture for the Port Authority. There are always challenges with community-based operations, but because we stay close, we don't just build and leave, we stay connected to these establishments. And so we're there to assist them to ensure that it is sustainable and it just doesn't operate for a period and then it starts to fail. We maintain our involvement and our participation. And so it remains a successful venture for us at the Port Authority, and the fisher folk are able to focus on their business. We'll go to the next slide, please. Right, so in terms of, again, we had the Port Royal development, which is another of our new facilities, and Port Royal was developed as a gateway into Kingston, a capital city, and also to accentuate the historical nature of this once world famous city. And what it did, it created economic and social benefits to pretty much a sleeping community. It enhanced the unique charm of a well-known world town. Port Royal was once destroyed by an earthquake, and development terminal brought it back to life and again created a gateway into Kingston. How we did this was through multi-stakeholder engagement, many different agencies of government, the Heritage Foundation, the Tourism Development Agencies, the Jamaica Tourist Board, the Urban Development Agency. We brought all of these together and created the sport and then engaged the community, doing things like engaging schools, looking at the facilities that they needed for development and sustainability of the Port Royal community. And so we're very proud of this engagement, and the community it's central to what we do in Port Royal. We could go to the next slide. Right, so here we are, some of the things that we've done in Port Royal. And one of the significant features of this, while we're also bringing this back to life, and we're doing things like helping a school with infrastructure, like building a perimeter fencing, that kind of thing. A key issue is that we installed a sewage treatment facility for our port operation, but we didn't do it with just the port in mind. What we did, we built the capacity to facilitate the sewage management of the town of Port Royal. And we built it in such a way that it could be accessible. So it wasn't built just in our property, but we built this in a way where the National Water Commission, which manages the sewage and water distribution for the country, had access, and it was integrated in the system. And so our port facility benefited the community in a significant way in this regard. Next one, please. Thank you. So here we are again, we're looking at the port facility in Port Royal. We created, I mentioned a sewage treatment facility before. We created a promenade which led from our terminal to the town of Port Royal. So the guests who came off the ships in Port Royal, they were able to walk directly into town. If you don't want to take a taxi, there's a promenade which is created so you can walk into town, you can visit the museum, you're able to interact with the communities, and community stakeholders, they now transform their businesses. Little bars, little shops were transformed into facilities, both for locals and for tourists. So they're able to generate additional income from the tourist traffic with the assistance of the Port Authority and other government and private stakeholders. Next, please. Yes, we can go to the next slide. This one takes a little time to slide. Awesome. So here, this one. Oh, right. Collaboration. So how we did this and all the projects that we undertake in the communities is collaboration with many different agencies of government. There's a Tourism Enhancement Fund, the National Water Commission, the Municipal Authority, the Urban Development Company, as I mentioned before, the Social Development Commission. And so we look at areas like, what are the needs? And so because of the multi-stakeholder engagement, we're able to identify what are the priority needs. Signage is one. The sewage was a major issue. Improvement of water storage, the public conveniences, both for the local community and the guests. Fisher folk, they depend on the sea. And once we go in as a port authority, we try not to displace them, but we try to integrate them. So even if they have to be relocated from a particular area, we find an alternate area to place them, and we ensure that that area that we're replacing them to is developed and have world-class standards. And so we create that kind of community engagement, and we engender sustainability. Painting of curb walls, painting of of areas of old buildings. And what we try to do in these instances is try to engage the community stakeholders. So if we're doing small projects, which are not highly technical, that we have to use architects and engineers, we try as best as we can to engage the community, to have them participate in what we do. So they now become owners and ambassadors, and we are partners with them. Next, please. Yep. So over the years of the community engagement of the Port Authority, we found that there are certain benefits that are derived for the community. While it is good for us as an organization and for Jamaica as a country, but the benefit for the community stakeholders, we've found that persons are better able to engage funding agencies if they're in formal structure, things like grant funding, other funding opportunities. If the government of Jamaica, and we say this to our stakeholders, our community stakeholders, if the government of Jamaica is going to attract assistance from global agencies, funding, it's always easier to get that done through organization and structure. And so this is one of the benefits of our engagement with the community. We find that many of the persons that we've engaged, they are seeking to advance their opportunities. We've had many issues, many instances where persons want to go to the consulate and embassies to acquire visas to travel, and they come to us and we're able to provide them with letters, with recommendations to say, we know these persons, they've worked with us for years, we can give character references, and that will help their case in acquiring visas and permits to travel overseas. And we have some who will travel overseas periodically. So in the summer period when our tourism figures are lower, these persons, some of them may travel overseas for work programs and then come back to Jamaica during the peak season in winter. And so we find that having them in these kinds of structure is helpful also to the communities. Once we have them in this kind of structure and organized way, we find that it improves the regulatory compliance. So we are able to help them to be compliant and to understand the necessity of regulation and compliance. And so it limits confrontation with enforcement agencies, whether it's the police, whether it's other agencies of government who grant licenses and permits. Once we work with community stakeholders, we're able to assist them to meet and maintain benchmark, because once we start the engagement, we do not leave alone, we do not divest ourselves, we maintain contact, we maintain accessibility. And this involvement engenders business continuity and it promotes business networking, so they're able to attend conferences, attend meetings, and to meet other persons, meet other stakeholders, and to share ideas. So we're very happy to be engaged in the community and to support their development and their sustainability. We could go to next, please. So overall, we think that being invested in the community is a critical component of what we do. So while we are developers and regulators, it is important for us, we consider, to engage the community, to stay close to the community, to be accessible to the community. And we find that social responsibility has been beneficial to us as a Port Authority, that we create ambassadors, we earn respect, we able to transform and to improve people's lives. So it's been a wonderful journey for us as a Port Authority, and engaging with the community. Continue to do this, and I thank you so much for listening and for the opportunity to share what we do.
Thank you so much, Mark, for this fantastic presentation and for sharing with us these successful practices on engaging existing communities and supporting the formalization of businesses. It was very insightful to learn from your experience and to see how these approaches can help strengthen local communities while creating new opportunities. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Our next speaker is Mr. Kaylon Young. Kaylon Young is the Ports Commissioner of the Belize Port Authority, where he provides leadership in maritime safety, port regulation, navigational safety, maritime security, and the development of Belize's port and maritime sector. He holds a master's degree in maritime affairs specializing in maritime law and policy from the World Maritime University, and has extensive experience in port operations, vessel traffic management, port state control, and maritime administration. His work focuses on strengthening Belize's maritime governance while advancing safe, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive port development, with particular emphasis on ensuring that the growth of the maritime and tourism sectors delivers meaningful benefits to local communities. Mr. Mr. Kalon Young, it is a pleasure to have you here with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be here to present to our colleagues about what we're doing in Belize and how we use the tourism community, the cruise industry to build our capacity in Belize. It's a pleasure to joining you guys. When we discuss cruise ports, we naturally speak about ships and terminals, infrastructure, passenger volumes, the economic impact that it has. But behind all of these are people. The long-term success of a cruise destination ultimately depends on whether the people who live in and work in these areas see the value of that industry. So my central message today will be very simple. A successful cruise port is not just a gateway for passengers, but it must also be a partner to its community. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So as mentioned, cruise ports are traditionally measured. We measure success of cruise ports and cruise tourism by how many vessels come to our ports, or how many passengers arrive, or how much revenue we generate from these cruise ports, if they turn around efficiency, and whether these operations are safe and secure. These factors are very important. Of course, it helps build our economy. But today, we take a broader view of tourism. We need to be more wide look at how we define a port performance. A port can be operationally efficient and commercially successful, while its surrounding communities feel increasingly disconnected. That won't work for our communities. And so we have to ensure that even though the port is successful, the community benefits from cruise tourism. And that includes that helps us to get sustainable success. So social responsibility therefore requires that we ask several different questions. Who benefits from the cruise activity? Are local businesses participating in these activities? Are workers protected and given opportunities to develop? Are communities involved in decision-making that affect them? Are cultural and natural assets being protected? And perhaps the most important, does the community believe that cruise tourism is beneficial to our destination? And so rather than looking just at the traditional measures of success, we have to see how it also affects our community, and that is sustainable success. Next slide, please. So for Belize and at the Port Authority, we serve as the regulator for the cruise industry and for the maritime sector, and so we take these things into consideration when we make our decisions, and looking forward to how we develop cruise tourism in Belize. And so Belize is a good example of how we're looking at developing societies, communities on cruise tourism. Our Belize Tourism Board has projected that approximately just over 967,000 cruise passengers arrived in 2025. This is about 8.1% above the 2024 cruise passengers arrival that we saw. So the economic footprint does exist, but it should exist beyond the cruise terminal. A passenger arriving in Belize may interact with a tender operator, interact with taxi drivers, tour guides, restaurants, craft vendors, archaeological sites, marine reserve, and many of the communities that are around the ports. So what we try to do is create jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities for Belizeans. Cruise tourism is not just within the terminal, but it extends beyond the terminal. So this is important as it creates economic value for all cruise calls, and it should not just be within the ports. The objective should be to extend our economic opportunity beyond port gate into the destinations, into the countries that the cruise visits. And for Belize, we have a highly sensitive marine and coastal resources. The question is not simply how much cruise tourism we can accommodate, but how we can manage these activities responsibly and ensure that our communities benefit. Next slide, please. So looking at the economic inclusion, we should not measure cruise tourism, as I said, by cruise arrivals, but how we include cruise tourism and passengers into a destination. Belize cruise policy provides a useful example. It promotes the use of Belize tour operators, Belizeans, entrepreneurs in excursion-related services within the country. This is very important. Social responsibility means deliberately creating opportunities for local and small enterprises, transportation providers, the artisans, the restaurants, the tour guides, and community. What we try to do is create the locals who have these crafts within the areas of cruise tourism to show our culture, show show their lives and the history of Belize. And it doesn't just look at introducing the passengers to what they expect, but to the culture, to the history of the country. And the ports are great in facilitating this. The ports encourage this. And so we try to create spaces for local businesses. We encourage local procurement. We look at the local tourism authorities to create baseline experiences, cultural experiences, using what we have in the country and using the activities that we have in the country to ensure that the tourism benefit from this, the passengers benefit, and the communities benefit. So if passenger numbers increase significantly, but local economic participation does not increase, then we have tourism growth without inclusive development. These are not the same thing. The cruise passenger should experience the destination and not just a terminal. Next slide, please. But even though we want to bring tourists into our country as to increase our economy, we must know that there's also impacts that we must manage, growth impacts. Cruise tourism concentrates significant numbers of people in relative small geographic areas in a relative short period of time. For large cities, this may be manageable, but for smaller destinations, especially those within the Caribbean, the concentration can place considerable pressure on our roads, on our attractions, on public infrastructure, on our marine environment, on our communities. We have updated our Belize cruise tourism policy for this, just because of this issue. We recognize that this is an issue, and so we've updated the policy. It establishes carrying capacity considerations in different sites to avoid overcrowding and physical deterioration of sites and the attraction to our communities. What we don't want is to have a whole lot of tourists coming to the destinations and deteriorating our sites, because it is a part of our economy, it is a part of our culture. And so we establish carrying capacities for different locations and for the city itself. This is very important to note. Some of the most socially responsible decision is not to maximize passengers, but to do it responsibly. It is to determine what level of activity the destination can accommodate while preserving the quality of the residents, while ensuring that the visitors have a great experience and the integrity of the destination remains intact. Because if we damage the natural, cultural, and social assets that attract the passengers in the first place, the industry will undermine itself. So we just try to ensure that we don't undermine ourselves and that we are protecting our environment for the people and for the community. Next slide, please. Ports must be good neighbors, definitely. This is not just about the passengers from cruise tourism, but the ports also as well. And the ports must build a relationship with the communities that they serve. Ports are unusual pieces of infrastructure. They generate significant economic growth, economic benefits, but their impacts experienced locally must also be seen. Traffic, congestion, noise, environmental concerns, these are some of the concerns we hear from ports. But there must be they must have an obligation to communicate to our communities, to listen to our communities, to respond, to address the challenges our communities face, to invest in our communities, and to measure the social impact. The port is important for our cruise tourism, but we also need that the ports understand the community is also important for the port survival. And the port mechanism through communities raise very concerns. And it is important that consultation be meaningful. It cannot simply be that ports are telling the communities what to do, but to work hand in hand. And we are really neighbors. And this is how we build communities, build our ports, build the cruise tourism sector in Belize. Next slide, please. And definitely, we can't forget about people. You just heard from Mark how Jamaica has involved its local in the cruise sector, and we need to discuss how people play the role that people plays in the development of our cruise sector, and how the cruise sector relies on the people in the communities to benefit. When we look at social responsibilities, we sometimes focus on communities and passengers and forget about these group of people, forget about the community people. But this is where cruise tourism needs to go, needs to develop, build communities and build people, port workers, pilots, security personnel, boat operators, tour guides, taxi drivers, vendors. Many other people are involved in the cruise sector, and so we need to look at them very carefully, set policies in place to ensure that we can all benefit. Social responsibility begins with providing a safe working environment, but it should not end there. It should go beyond safety. Training our professionals, developing the people around the ports. This is very important, and this helps to develop our economy. Cruise tourism shall create not only jobs, but pathways for people to acquire skills, to advance professionals, and to participate in higher value parts of the maritime tourism sector. Ports can therefore become an important platform for human capital development. Next slide, please. And so a lot of things that we may also overlook is the passengers itself, the cruise passengers. Passengers themselves can become participants in responsible tourism. We often view passengers purely as consumers, but we can also provide them with information that allows them to make responsible choices. For example, we encourage passengers to buy local when in Belize, to use local tour operators, to purchase food locally. And if information is shared to the passengers, then the passengers now have a choice that they can decide where they want to purchase food from. They want to purchase local food, or they want to take local tours. This might seem like a small decision for the passengers, but multiply these decisions by hundreds of thousands, and you can see the economic effects that the passengers will have on the communities they serve. Next slide, please. So as I'm coming to the end, I would just like to return back to my central idea that the future of cruise ports cannot be defined simply by bigger ships, by larger terminals, by increasing passenger numbers. Those things may be part of the future, but they cannot be the objective by themselves. The objective should be a shared value. A port should generate value for the cruise lines, value for the passengers, value for local businesses, and value for workers and for the community. For Belize and other Caribbean countries and small island developing states, this is particularly important. Our destinations are our greatest assets. Our people, our culture, our coastlines, marine environment, and communities. These are precisely the reasons why passengers visit our countries. Protecting these assets is therefore not contrary to economic development, but it works together with economic development. It promotes economic development. It is what makes a long-term economic development possible. And this is why I believe that the social responsibility should not sit on the margins of cruise port management, just as a corporate social responsibility. It should be integrated in how we plan, how we regulate, how we operate the measures, and how we measure success of our ports. If our ports grow while our communities prosper, our workers develop, our environment is protected, and our passengers leave with meaningful connections to the destination, then we have achieved something more valuable than just moving passengers efficiently. We have created a sustainable cruise tourism destination in our country. Next slide. And with that, I want to thank you guys for listening, and hope that we can continue to build our cruise facilities, build our cruise tourism industries, and include the communities that we serve, the communities that serve the people, and ensure that we include our culture, our history into cruise tourism. And that's how we build our economy and not just build the cruise tourism sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaelan, for this excellent presentation. I would like to highlight your approach of moving beyond traditional measures and focusing instead on local value and responsible growth. This is a valuable perspective on how we can promote sustainable and inclusive development. Thank you so much. Now I would like to introduce the next speaker, Ms. Adiola Moore. Ms. Adeola Moore is the Chief Executive Officer of the St. Christopher Air and Sea Ports Authority, SCASPA, a position she has held since November 2022. An accomplished professional with over 16 years of experience in public sector financial management and administration, she previously served in senior leadership positions within the Inland Revenue Department, including responsibility for the Internal Tax Unit. As CEO of SCASPA, she provides strategic leadership across the Federation's air and maritime gateways with a focus on sustainable growth, infrastructure development, operational excellence, stakeholder engagement, and strengthening the authority's contribution to national development. She continues to champion partnerships that connect port operations with economic opportunity, community development, and a more sustainable future for the maritime sector. It is a pleasure to have you here with us, Adiola. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Blanco, and good afternoon, all colleagues, distinguished guests, port authorities and operators and partners. It is a pleasure to join you today. I would like to thank the SIP OAS for giving me this opportunity. Jorge and your team, your amazing team, I am grateful for this opportunity to present some perspectives from St. Kitts and Nevis with the group here today. Okay. Are you seeing my slides?
Not yet. Would you like us to share your slide?
Please.
Okay, perfect. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. All right, I guess I'll have to get you to control it because I'm not getting it to move.
Yes, just let us know when to click next.
All right, so you can go to the next slide. All right, so I want to start with a quick poll. So what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear social responsibility in a cruise port? And I have some answers here projected. I suspect we will have different answers, and that is precisely the point. Social responsibility in a modern port is no longer just one activity. It is a combination of all of these. It is not something a port does outside of its core business anymore. It is increasingly a part of how a modern port measures its operational excellence, how it measures its stakeholder value, its resilience, and its long-term competitiveness. Next slide. The St. Christopher Air and Sea Ports Authority, SCASPA, manages and operates the RLB International Airport, the Deepwater Cargo Port, the Bastia Ferry Terminal, Port Zante, on which we will focus today, the Port Zante Cruise Terminal. SCASPA is evolving from a port that only facilitates cruise tourism to a port that deliberately connects cruise tourism with people, business, with safety and communication and development. Next slide. Right, SCASPA is the gateway to St. Kitts, and it's a key driver of trade, it's a key driver of tourism, economic growth. Our established stated mission and vision are centered around delivering safe and secure services and sustainable growth while exceeding customer expectations. Next slide. The port is more than just a gateway. So when we talk about cruise ports, we naturally think about the ships, we think about the berths, the terminals, the passenger numbers, infrastructure, and of course, we definitely think about the revenues. But today, I want us to look at cruise port through different lens. Behind every cruise passenger is a community, and behind every cruise call are hundreds of workers. And behind every port investment are the people whose lives can be affected when the decisions are made by the cruise industry. So the question is no longer simply, how many passengers did we receive? The more important questions are, how much value did we create? Who participated? Who benefited? And what did we leave behind? Now, this for me is social responsibility in cruise port operations. Next slide. So, social responsibility was once viewed largely as just providing sponsorships, providing the donations and charitable activities. These things remain important to us here at SCASPA. So we continue to support the schools, we continue to support the communities, sports, religion, and the list continues both financially and in kind. But modern social responsibility has evolved, and so we have to move forward with it. It is increasingly about how the port operates every day. It means asking, are the local businesses participating and benefiting from the cruise economy? Are workers properly trained and protected? Are the people seeing the maritime tourism careers as opportunities? Are passengers experiencing the authentic culture and destination? Are the communities seeing tangible benefits? Now, these questions we would use to develop the industry to ensure that these things are handled and handled correctly so that the communities can see the benefits. For us at SCASPA, we also look at the aspects, and these different aspects are especially important. The ports are an integral part of the community they serve. Now, Port Zante sits right in the heart of Bastia. So the cruise passenger walks directly from the port into our community. The physical proximity creates both an opportunity and a responsibility. Next slide. Right, a cruise port does not operate alone. At Port Zante, a single cruise call begins or brings together an extensive network. The passenger may encounter a port officer, they may encounter an immigration officer, a taxi operator, a tour guide, shopkeeper. When they venture into our communities, they may come in contact with restaurant workers, local artisans, security officer, or even cultural performer. That is why I believe social responsibility must be viewed as a network responsibility. If one part of the system fails, the passenger experience could suffer, and ultimately the reputation of the destination suffers. Next slide. So, am I now controlling my own slides? All right, at SCASPA, our responsibility starts internally. Our employees are the first ambassadors of the authority. We therefore have to invest in our people, not simply as employees, but as the professionals who interact directly with passengers, shipping lines, businesses, and the wider community. We also recognize that the passenger is not simply a statistic. The passenger experience is influenced by everything from the condition of the facilities to the way they are greeted, how quickly they receive assistance, how easily they can find information, and how safely they move through the port. And finally, there is the community. SCASPA's corporate philosophy explicitly identifies investment in the community through educational programs, sponsorships, charities, as part of its contribution to sustainable development. So for us, social responsibility is not one department's responsibility, but it's an organizational responsibility. Cruise success should not be measured only by how many passengers arrived. Instead, some of the questions need to be asked. How long did they stay? How much did they actually spend? How many local people were employed? Would they return? Did the community benefit? These are all important, and it's an important shift for cruise destinations. A port can celebrate record passenger numbers and still have questions about how much value is actually retained within the local economy. Now at SCASPA, Port Zante is an important component of the tourism economy, and it is designed to connect visitors with local attraction. It's designed to connect them with the restaurants, with the cultural experiences. But our ambition should go beyond just the volume. We need to understand the quality of the economic connection. Are the passengers purchasing locally produced goods? Are they using local transportation? Are local tour operators benefiting? Are the artisans able to access the market? And are young people finding employment and career opportunities? Now, that is where social responsibility would intersect with economic development. Back in February, we had the overnight visit of the MS Avia vessel, which SCASPA hosted in collaboration with some of its sister agencies. The event was designed around the concept A Night to Remember. We had music, there was culture, food, art, and local experiences forming part of the welcome. So the significance is bigger than just the vessel itself. An overnight vessel can create a different opportunity for a destination. It allows us to ask, how do we move our passengers from simply visiting St. Kitts to actually experiencing St. Kitts? And this can be placed in the context of your respective port authorities. How do you move passengers from simply visiting your destination to actually experiencing it? For us in St. Kitts, the overnight vessel experience meant creating opportunities for our local restaurants. It created opportunities for our entertainers, our artisans, our transport providers, the tour operators, and other businesses. This demonstrates the port's role, not merely as a gateway for cruise passengers, but as a vital connector between the cruise industry and the local economy, creating that shared value while fulfilling its corporate social responsibility. On the horizon, we also have our new home porting cruise terminal that will enhance guest arrival and departure, but more importantly, in this context of social responsibility, it would create jobs. It would create local business participation, higher economic impact, and ultimately creating resiliency within our tourism industry. Social responsibility starts with people. One of the most sustainable investments a port can make is its investment in young people. SCASPA has a long-standing history of educational and community programs, including its best-in-class educational initiative. There was the school adoption activities, but more recently and currently, we are undertaking the exposure of students to the operations of our gateways through a summer internship program that grants the children of SCASPA employees the opportunity to gain first-hand exposure to the operation of a modern, resilient port with insightful work experiences during the summer break. So they are currently working. I think they have 1 week left on this program, but it develops their skills and it creates sustainability for the future. So, with our ports, we need engineers, we need maritime professionals, we need logistics experts, customer service ambassadors, and leaders, amongst others. So I think social responsibility in this context, therefore, includes creating pathways into the industry. I believe that the port of the future is a socially responsible port. We should continue measuring vessel calls, of course. We continue to measure passenger volumes, revenues, and operational efficiency. But we should complement those with measures of the social indicator measures. So, for example, how many local businesses actually participated? How many people received training? What percentage of procurement went to our local suppliers? How satisfied were the passengers? How safe and engaged were employees? And how many value remained within the community? So the modern port should therefore have a broader definition when it comes to performance. So as I reflect on the different agencies represented here today on this webinar, I believe that we have an enormous opportunity. Every port has a different reality, but we have a common responsibility. We are custodians of infrastructure. We are facilitators of trade and tourism. We are employers. We are neighbors to the communities. And increasingly, we are technology and innovation platforms. So I leave you with these questions, not because I have all the answers, because I don't, but because these are questions that every port authority could continually ask. Who benefits from the industry's growth? How are you preparing your workforce for tomorrow? What will your communities say about you like 10 years down the road? Let me close with this quotation that I found, and it says, "A great port moves ships. A great cruise port moves people, but a responsible cruise port moves communities forward." The future of cruise port operations will not be defined only by larger ships, bigger terminals, or greater passenger numbers. It will be defined by how intelligently we connect the people, technology, the infrastructure, the business, and the community. So at SCASPA, we recognize that our role extends beyond operating the gateways. We have a responsibility to help build a stronger, more skilled, more sustainable, and more connected community. And I believe that is the responsibility shared by all of us represented here today. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Ariola, for this excellent presentation. I would like to highlight your point that delivering an outstanding experience is a shared responsibility across the entire network, with every stakeholder playing a very important role. It is also essential to approach this work through a socially responsible lens, ensuring that the efforts made create a positive and lasting value for communities. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our wonderful speakers. And now I would like to continue with the Q&A session and invite the speakers to join me on the screen so we can start. I see Mark, I see Ariola, and I'm just me. Okay, now I can see Mr. Young as well. So the first question is for Mark. Has there been a noticeable attainment of your objectives following the execution of socially responsible programs?
Thank you for the question. Yes. So we've found out that what has happened is that our community stakeholders are more engaged. They look to us for leadership, and what we find is that even where there are disputes and disagreements, they ask for our intervention, our involvement in resolving these disputes. And the other thing, they look towards us for the training program. So every year prior to the peak season, we have a training program, and even persons who are not directly involved in some of the projects that we do, they try to participate in these programs. So we feel satisfied that the engagement is working. We've had situations where we would prefer to say, okay, we'll take it here and then we'll divest it to another agency like a municipal authority, but our stakeholders say, no, we prefer to work with the Port Authority. We prefer how you do it. We like that kind of engagement, because also we're not doing it for profit directly. We're doing it to lift the community. We're doing it to ensure that they feel invested as we're invested. So we find it to have been very profitable in terms of undertaken, in terms of what it has done for the lives of the community and the community stakeholders. Yes.
Yes, and I think you've made a fantastic work of making them feel as what they really are, ambassadors of the port. Thank you so much.
Yes. And one of the things we did with, particularly for the pedicab, what we did when we started that project, so these were young men, some of them never worked before formally. We arranged with one of the attractions operators which operate close to our terminal, and we sent them through one of the activities as though they were tourists. So it gave them an opportunity to see how the tours were delivered to the tourists, and it built their confidence, and they really appreciated that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so
Yep.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is for Kaylin. Who should take the lead in promoting social responsibility in cruise tourism? The cruise lines, the ports, or the government?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think social responsibility does not belong to one stakeholder. It's a shared responsibility. The government is responsible for establishing the policy and the frameworks, the regulatory frameworks. The ports have a part to play. They have to manage the interaction between the ships and the destination. The cruise lines also have influence on the passengers and the excursions and the visitor experience. And the local communities who are also impacted, the businesses in the countries and in these destinations. So the responsibility is not for one individual, but collectively, our stakeholders must come together if we want to increase this experience. And from a regulator's perspective, we are responsible. We don't try to manage every part of the industry, but we try to create the conditions that make these things possible. That ensures that we have growth in the sector. But as mentioned, we all need to come together, because the cruise industry will only succeed when the entire destination succeeds, and we all come to this collectively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. Yes, as Adiola also said in her presentation, it is like a network of responsibility. Thank you so much. Now, Areola, what is the role of partnerships in the context of social responsibility?
All right. Thank you, Monica. Partnerships are, to me, at the heart of social responsibility, because I think they allow us to move from simply giving back, as I mentioned in my presentation, to creating shared value. So the future is not just about the port supporting the community through donations. You know, instead of just giving, it's about the ports, the government, the cruise line, businesses, even academia and communities working together to solve real problems that could create lasting value. So it's about shared responsibility, as mentioned, and, you know, partnering with each other to ensure lasting value. Thank you.
Thank you, Adiola. Next question is for Mark. How have maintained the social responsibility programs after implementation?
You repeat for me?
How have you maintained the social responsibility programs?
Thank you. It is never easy to maintain these programs, because they do require funding, and sometimes your accounting colleagues internally will say, okay, fine, this is expensive. How do you maintain this on our budget? But the principle of it is that you cannot attain your success without taking a community along with you. So it is better to invest in a community to prevent a crisis. And so we find that every year we pass the budget, we try to say, what is going to cost for us to ensure that we secure the community's involvement and the community's participation. And we try to be as efficient as we can with resources. And in terms of some of the projects, because we formalize what we what the community stakeholders do. We try to get them to a level of efficiency, even if what we're doing is, we're not seeking profit. What we're doing is try to create efficiencies for them so they can sustain business, they can sustain the interest of visitors coming in. So visitors will continue to patronize them, and they will make enough from what they do to sustain themselves and sustain their families. So that is how we do it. We will still have to do some amount of investment financially in these projects. However, in the long term, it is to the benefit of the community, the benefit of the stakeholders, and the benefit of the community overall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Next question is for Kaylin. Small Caribbean destinations often have less negotiating power than major cruise lines. How can destinations like Belize ensure that their national interests remain part of the conversation?
Yeah, so this is always a tough one for smaller countries, because of the huge bargaining power of cruise lines. But we must also take this from a policies perspective first and foremost. We when we have these discussions, we must be clear about the national policies, as it relates to cruise tourism, and take this approach from a national policy perspective and not a reactive one. Secondly, I do believe that for small countries, of course, it's difficult, but there needs to be collaboration within the region. There needs to have regional collaboration. Countries need to come together. For example, the Caribbean, we have many of the same issues faced, and so if we come together and take regional perspective, regional decisions, and we can tackle our common challenges from a regional perspective. At the same time, we must also recognize what we bring to the table as well, what we bring to this relationship as well. The region is not simply just providing the port infrastructure. We are providing the destination, the culture, the experiences, the environment that the passengers are looking for. And so we also have a big part to play in the decision making. And so, like I said, the relationship should not be one of superiority or inferiority, but one of partnership. We want to ensure that the cruise sector benefits, of course, but we also want to ensure that there's long-term the development for our destinations, and ensure that the cruise product stays viable and stays productive. And so it's this collaboration and partnerships, and collectively we can ensure that we have a part to play and we have a say in these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. And now the last question is for Adeola. How does SCASPA define success beyond passenger numbers?
Okay, thank you again, Monica, for the question. What I'll say is that we certainly value passenger arrivals, we value cruise calls. As I projected on one of my slides before, we have the traditional KPIs in comparison to the future port KPIs. But true success, I think, goes beyond just the volume. I think for us, it is about value again, the value we create, the positive impact we have on the communities that we serve, how many local businesses actually benefited, how satisfied were our passengers, how do we support our employees, keep for their well-being and the employment opportunities that we create. So our environmental performance, for example, is something that we look at as a future key performance indicator, the worker well-being, the local employment, the skills that we develop. So I think to define success beyond passenger numbers would be to create a positive impact on the communities we serve through creating value from the cruise industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adeola, for your answer. With that, we finished the Q&A session. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for sharing your valuable experiences and insights, and to everyone who joined us today. Today's discussion highlighted the importance of placing people at the center of cruise port operations and ensuring that the growth of cruise tourism creates positive and lasting benefits for passengers, workers, and of course, local communities. On behalf of the Secretariat of the Inter-American Committee on Ports, we sincerely appreciate your participation and contribution to this important conversation. Now I would like to return the floor to Jorge Duran for his closing remarks of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Monica, and thank the three of you for such a wonderful time that I've had here, learning and reaffirming some things that I thought I had right, and I did have them right. I'm happy to tell you. But as usual, before I go, I'd like to point out that we did, first of all, thank our audience, all 87 of them from several port authorities from Suriname to Argentina to Mexico to all over the region, as well as the Caribbean. Thank you for attending this important event for us. And I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to congratulate you and Mark, you and Kaylin and Adiola, the three of you were in agreement that in order for a cruise port to really be not just a gateway for in and out, but an actual contributor to the socioeconomic development of the community, you need to invest in the community. You need to be engaged with the community. This was a theme that all three port authorities presenting here were very, very adamant on, and there's other things that were shared, like the sustainable tourism part, for instance. And this is also important to note that there's two commonalities within these port authorities that consider it essential in order for the port to be successful to invest and engage with the community, to have the sustainability aspect of it very present. And Mark's in the Port Authority of Jamaica's presentation, he did and showed some pictures of the upgrades in infrastructure that the community receives from the involvement of the Port Authority in that particular town. I have been to Jamaica many times, and all the done waterfalls and all of that I did with all the rest of the tourists. And it is a really enjoyable time. But I'm happy to see that this upgrade is not just in infrastructure, but also it provides them support to formalize their businesses, to formalize the sort of legal reason of being, and that this will then grant them or afford them an opportunity to access funding opportunities, as well as the assistance that you provide for embassies and so forth for required visas and whatnot, as well as to improve compliance and encourage business continuity. So it was clear after your presentation, Mark, that the involvement of the Port Authority of Jamaica through the cruise terminal is an intrinsic and essential part of your work, of the Port of Authority's philosophy and policies to work with the communities for the betterment of everybody. Then Kalen came over and he started saying, well, we need to be a partner of the community. The port needs to be a part of the community. You highlighted the three spheres: the economic, the social, the environmental, and how the fact that you have more tourists does not necessarily immediately translate into more value, because there are things that the Port Authority pays attention to that need to be followed in order for this growth to be in agreement with the environment, respecting infrastructure, marine ecosystems, the local artisans, and so it's a comprehensive experience and view that you have, and how these cruise ports and the tourists benefit the community from, like I said in our private chat, from transportation to restaurants to tours operators to the artisans, and really the whole gestalt of the community is supported to this. And importantly, you also mentioned that is important to educate the tourist. Him or herself needs to know that they shouldn't buy from non sort of official vendors and eat at appropriate restaurants. And so the passenger also needs to be educated on how to be safe, sustainable, inclusive, resilient, connected, and accountable, just like the port. And last but not least, Adela, you gave a wonderful picture of SCASPA's view on the, again, started with community involvement, with the importance of sustainability, of creating welfare and economic development, and for the passenger experience to be just that, an experience, not just a destination to go to, but an experience. And the questions that you asked were like, how much value did we create as social responsible port authority in the cruise port? So the question there is of a different, not only level but also focus. As the usual things that we ask ourselves is, you're asking, how do we create value for both the community and for the Port Authority and the other stakeholders involved. You mentioned economic growth as well, the support that the three of you do to the community through schools, through environmental programs, and this obviously enables and provides an opportunity for the community to grow in a very well-planned manner, not just growth for the sake of growth, but actually within some checks and balances, putting people first of the port, then the passengers and the community. And I like at the end of the presentations where you invest in the coming generations, in the next generation. So you're already getting the kids and the youngsters of the community involved with this so they can all get in the program. And ladies and gentlemen, those are my take-home notes from today's event, for which I again reiterate my thanks to the speakers. I saw several clapping hands here and there, which we all deserve. You all deserve indeed. So before we close and before I bid you farewell, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to ask Monica to remind us all about the next webinar, and then I'm going to give you the floor and just do it the way I have you here. So it'll be Mark, Adiola, and then Kaylon, so that you can all bring a goodbye or whatever message you want for the audience. So Monica, when is our next webinar?
Yes, so our next webinar is on September 24. It will be on AI, artificial intelligence, and we are very happy and excited to have you there. We will be sharing more information about the webinar in the next couple of weeks, so be ready for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. May I also remind the audience and the presenters, I have uploaded on the chat the link, the web address where the audience and those interested may access and download your presentations. Thank you so much for sharing them with us, not only of this webinar, but of any of the webinars we've ever done. So with that said, Mark, you have the floor, and then Adiola, and then Kayla.
Thank you once more to everybody. Really delighted to have been a part of this and look forward to the next. And as Kaylin said, we really want to engender the partnership and the integration among the destinations and among all the stakeholders. So really, really appreciate being here. Thank you and wish you all the best.
Thank you, and my best to Professor Shirley and all the Port Authority crowd over there, the whole team.
Thank you.
Adela?
All right, so my final words, thank you all for listening. It was a pleasure sharing my perspectives from St. Kitts and Nevis with you. I would say to the audience to be able not to just simply operate ports that receive passengers, but for the audience, I would say build and operate ports that connects people, build and operate ports that create opportunities and strengthen your communities, as we've all said throughout the three presentations, and a port and experience that would leave a lasting positive impact. Remember, I said earlier that a great port moves ships, a great cruise port moves people, but a responsible cruise port moves communities forward. Thank you.
That's a great way to close there. Anyway, Kaylin.
Yes, thank you. And I should have gone before Adiola because that was an excellent closing.
Thank you.
But I just want to say thanks to the SIP for hosting us and for having us present. I think it's really important that we understand how the cruise sector affects our communities and how we move towards the new I say the new KPIs. And so I just want to empower the listeners to open your mind, and be more open-minded to the new way of cruise tourism, and see how you can encourage community to be more involved, encourage people to be more involved, because cruise tourism is not just again about passengers, but it's more about community and people, and how we build our capacities. So thank you all for listening, and then thanks for having us here.
Yes. Well, again, my thanks to you. And yes, it is easier said than done, however. And I truly believe that without the guidance and the support and accompaniment of the port authorities that you all represent, the communities would be a completely different story. You guys and the port authorities are essential partners for development in our countries, and for that, I thank you and your institutions. So I will see everybody else on September 24th on the Artificial Intelligence webinar. As you know, Monica will be sending out the save the date. You can find the information in the portal. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and your questions. Unfortunately, we're not able to address them as such, but please contact us if you want to contact one of the speakers directly. We'll be happy to share his or her email with you, and you can follow up directly. I see all these clapping hands and all these happen,
Thank you.
to which I will add my own, because this is all in recognition of your work and your presentations in helping us better understand the importance and the value of having a social responsibility policy or philosophy in the Port Authority for the improvement and betterment of the community and the passengers and the cruise line and all the stakeholders. So thank you again. Thank you, audience. We'll see you soon on the 24th. Thank you.
It has been a fantastic event. We thank our speakers, Mark Hilton of the Port Authority of Jamaica, Kaylin Young of the Belize Port Authority, and Adeola Moore of the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority. Thank you as well to Monica Blanco for moderating this session. Today we confirmed that social responsibility is what turns a port of call into a true community partner. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at the next CIPOAS webinar. See you soon.